Welcome to the Copilot Connection. We're here to bring you all the latest news, the latest thinking, and the latest ideas around Copilot and the wider section from that. And those eagle-eyed watching on the video may notice that we have a slightly different co-host with me here today. And the reason is we've decided to start doing not quite spin-offs of the podcast, but more focused areas that we can do on a regular basis. So today, we're going to be digging into some of the more extensibility and development sides of Copilot. I'm Kevin McDonnell. I'm the Copilot Strategy and Modern Workplace AI lead at Avanade, and I have a new co-host with me today. Gary, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Kev. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Garry Trinder. I am a developer advocate. I work at Microsoft. I'm focused on extensibility, specifically Microsoft 365 Copilot extensibility. But you can't go far without actually working with things in Azure, Copilot Studio, all those kind of things as well. So yeah, excited to be here. Looking forward to chatting tech things with you, Kev.
Absolutely. So this is the reason when usually at this point, Zoe would kind of go quiet and glaze over slightly as I dig into this stuff. This will be some of the shows that we look to go into those in a bit more depth. And we're going to tag these so you know very clearly. And if dev's not your thing, no worries, skip this. The good news is Zoe will also have a guest that we'll introduce soon, a kind of fellow co-host that is going to dig a bit more into the responsible AI and governance side of things. I'm sure some of you are guessing, going, I wonder who that could be. I'm working that out. But so we're going to have these, we're going to tag them. If we can work out a way to have different feeds, so if you just want these, you can get them. If you want everything, you can, and look through from that. But we thought we'd keep them in the main feed and go on from there at that point. And why are we doing this? Well, you kind of alluded a little bit to it there, Gary, that you said, well, there's this, there's Azure, there's Foundry, there's Copilot Studio, declarative agents, SharePoint agents, MCP, A2A, all these kind of phrases that we kind of throw at people here and there. And I think it gets people a bit lost from that. So what we're going to do today is kind of go as a bit of an intro of that, of covering all the, not covering all the different areas, but sort of talking about them. But we're going to frame it as a kind of why, what, and how side of it, aren't we?
Yeah, like exactly what you said. You can't go like a week without some new thing being kind of released or some new protocol, and then the rush for adding that protocol into different services. And then we have some services that support this, some services that don't, where it's like it's trying to navigate that kind of landscape of something that's kind of always changing. But they're just different options. They're tools in the tool bag, right? And they allow you to achieve like a certain outcome. But there's still different ways of doing that. So yeah, hopefully, I mean, I'm always learning as well. And there's always things that I don't know because we've released something in Azure land and it's like, oh, it's not quite been on my radar, but it's quite important. It's like, we're all going through the same thing. So I'm pretty sure that people are listening and are like, oh, what about this? And what about that?
And I think we've had a regular call, haven't we, for a while? We've kind of dug into these things and chatted, what are clients saying? What are Microsoft doing and things like that. So I was kind of like, we should just record this as long as we don't mention some things in there. And that's why we're not going live, to make sure we don't tread too many boundaries. Then we can kind of record it and make it available for other people as well.
Yep.
So, but I think most importantly is, you touch on there, Gary, there's new protocols, there's new things coming out. I think it's really important to understand why. Why is it that you should look at these things? What are the benefits? What are the important bits to it? Because I think you and I are both people who go, oh, something new. Let's try it out. Let's play with this. Let's see what it is, which is great. But not everyone should be doing that. There's got to be reasons why you're doing it. You're not just bringing new technology in for the sake of it.
And I think on that, it's like different levels of maturity as well. We've got people who are devs and are looking at agents from a kind of process perspective, and where that can fit into standard, maybe improving like a business like workflow that would maybe go across company. You've got other people who are using AI in their day-to-day, might be using prompting, but then it's like, where's that shift next to then, okay, I'm doing my prompting, but like now I need an agent, and understanding, okay, well, why do I need an agent? And once you understand that, it's like, okay, what options do I have?
Yeah.
and what can I do? So how can you kind of like mature on that scale as well? Because I mean, I personally think is like AI is becoming very much a personal tool. Like there's one size fits all, but generally you want it to be adapted and tailored to your personal circumstance and the way that you interact with different people, like if you're generating content. But then that can scale to your organization as well. Like your organization has certain rules and cultures that you might want to include into these agents before you push them out. So it's kind of like understanding that and then thinking, okay, how do we build these like experiences that are relevant to
To you.
individuals and
Yeah.
exactly. It's, perfect example is the kind of, write me an email, and the email that comes back is something that's really formal and you're like, I would never write that email. So you want to add a bit of personalization. It's like the technology is there, but you just want to tweak it and tailor it for what you want it to do. And there's loads of
Yeah.
different options that might be out of the box, which I think you get more options, but it's like, no, I need something custom. What again, what can I use
Yeah.
for my scenario? Yeah.
So I agree. I agree with that, but I'd say it's not just individual. I say that that
Hmm.
kind of evolution of seeing the team face is something we'll probably cover. You know, the ability to bring
Yeah.
agents into meetings where you're working together on things. The joy of pages where you can work to, you can take that prompt and then work together, enhance it on there
Mm.
as well. I think, if I'm honest, most people aren't ready for that. And I don't think the technology is quite in the place to be there. But I think that there are almost two streams. There's me and us that need to go through there. And I know Amy Diamond had a thing of kind of Copilot is for us, agents for me, which didn't entirely agree with on that. But I think it's a kind of nice. I think there are a section that exactly as you say, it's me. I want to be able to do stuff. I want things in my style. I love that email example.
Yeah.
My session at Comsverse was actually quite a big chunk was exactly that. How do
Mm.
you how do you put you into it? And with
Mm.
the Copilot memory coming along, there's even more ways to be able to do this. But how does it not fit? Anyway, we're going to drifting already, which is unsurprising on there. So I'm going to kick off a bit with that why that you've kind of led into. And when I first started talking about extensibility, there were kind of two things I got people thinking about because I think the assumption is Copilot, and I kind of mean that in the generic sense, can do everything. But because of this kind of focus on Copilot as UI for AI, people think they can just go there and they know what their context is. They know what they
Mm.
want it to do. And they kind of assume Copilot does as well. So if you say, give me a status report, does that mean your family at home? How are they doing? Does that mean the project you're working on? Does that mean your status report on how you're doing
Mm.
with your career and things like that? In your head, you're probably thinking about the projects. Seeing Teams
Yeah.
messages going on, go away, no, stop it. But thinking about those kind of updates and things that you have that context. Copilot doesn't. Copilot has for Copilot for the web, it's got everything. M365 Copilot has your emails, your Teams. It's got everything from that sense. So one of the things to look at is scoping in, is to be able to
Mm.
define a bit more of that content within there. Now that when I first started talking about this, we were talking about agents within that. Sorry, damn it, wrong way around. We talked about plugins.
Mm.
Now I think it's even better that you can scope it with agents, and you're starting to look at specific scenarios, focusing on specific tasks that you can say, when I mention this agent, or when it identifies that I should be using this agent, that it will scope down to that sort of limited set of knowledge, that limited set of functionality within there to get to
Mm.
what you want.
Yeah.
Copilot Notebooks is a great example where you can put a set of different files from different places and say, I want to ask questions of this. So I think that's one of the big areas is to kind of say, I have a specific task. And I think if we're looking at this automation of business processes, I have a business process. I want you to focus on this. So that's one example there.
Yeah, it's specialists, right? It's like designing something that's really good at doing a particular job, and I think that's kind of and the context, right? It's like you're adding the context that you're maybe thinking about into that agent, so you don't have to think about it. So it's like status report, right? It's like, well, you might have a project agent, well, it's or an agent specific to a project, and then you might say, well, I just want a status report. Well, the agent already knows what project you're talking about, so it can understand that, and it's got all the kind of instructions in the background of how you want it to be formatted, and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, and it just
And just
takes
quickly
that
on that one,
load away.
you were
Yeah,
talking about the personal one. I genuinely have a status report agent that I've built, and
same.
it doesn't have the sources
Yeah.
because I can't connect up to that DevOps environment, sadly. But it has the format, so I tend to
Mhm.
splurge into it and just say we did this, we did that,
Yeah.
and it kind of rejigs it into the right format of something to edit. So it's a very basic end user agent, really, but it
Yeah.
does exactly what I need it to. It
And
scopes it to that format.
yeah, and this is the thing, kind of going back to the technology bit of like, we talked about so many different things from like end user, really simple to really advanced stuff that it's
Mhm.
like, it's trying to figure out, okay, well, which bit's relevant, when to use the relevant technology. And back to your point, Kevin, about that status report, I have exactly the same thing. Like I've got markdown files in my OneDrive, which I point the declarative agent at, and then I get it to basically go through my weekly like markdown files for every day, like a bit of a journal, and then give me a summary. Like, what did I work on? Cross-reference
That's
it.
nice.
Like, are there things that I want to look at? But it's incredibly simple to build. I don't need custom models or anything like that. It's RAG and it's summarization, and it works, and it's a good kind of easy step into kind of doing that. And as things progress as well, like we've seen things like, to give you another option, it's like we've got the standard agents. We've had the new kind of agents come in, like researcher, which is then like
Love
reasoning, right?
research.
And deep reasoning. And then this is the thing, is like then picking okay, do I need reasoning here, or do I just need something to generate?
Yeah.
Because they're very different things, and they're going to give you different outcomes. It's like, actually, you might want a reasoning model for planning, right? It's really good at that. It's going to look at lots of different options. It's going to kind of reiterate on things rather than just kind of responding directly to your prompt. It's going to do that extra work. So I think those kind of things as well is like another thing to think about is like, is that something that you need
Yeah.
for your scenario? So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the kind of scoping in on the scenario
Mm-hmm.
on there. I think the other side is scoping out. So M365 Copilot, especially, has M365 data. But you can actually extend that with connectors to bring more knowledge into that to be able to use. So, bringing things like Salesforce in there, your CRM systems, your IT tickets on there. I'm working with a pharma company at the moment, and their research materials, their research notes, and all their knowledge there, their ERP systems, how they track all the different things, even their bespoke databases. They're all bits of data knowledge that you might
Mm-hmm.
want to bring into things as well. So extending beyond that becomes a different way with the knowledge. Plus, you got your APIs, your tools, as they're now kind of being named, because we love good rename, on there that you're connecting to do things. So you were talking about planning. Yeah, planning. You want to get all your different knowledge to come through, but then you want to make a task for people as well. So somehow you can connect to that. Yes, that could be Planner, but it could be Jira, could be Azure DevOps, could be all sorts of different things. I was talking to someone yesterday about Zoho and things like that. All these different ways that you could be logging those tasks, and they've got different APIs, and they're scoping outside that boundary you talk about as well. And
Yeah.
then the other one that's slightly newer, I'll just finish this off and then let you go through there. Um, that I think is really hard to kind of really put specific criteria, but it's enhance. It's with Copilot, you get what Copilot does, especially with the orchestration. You've almost got do something, fire off, get a result for the user. You might want to do something, connect to something else, process that in a certain way, and you want to control a slightly more complex flow within there. You need to take that a little bit further. So you may want to enhance and build some more logic. I'm working on a project at the moment where, in certain scenarios, we kind of don't want the LLM to kick in. We want to go through a very fixed process. It must do this, it must do that, it must do that as well. You want to make sure that, especially if someone's talking about something sensitive, you don't want the LLM to go, yeah, that's fine, go and do that and chop your leg off. That's lovely. That's exactly what we want you to do. So, no, no,
Mm,
no. And yes, I know you've got the responsible AI and things like that, but there are certain scenarios you very much want to keep it on those rails as well. So
mm.
that's another area I'd say you see that extensibility too.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a key thing of using AI where it's relevant and using other solutions where it's relevant. And one thing which I keep hearing at the moment is OCR. People are like, oh, OCR, just throw a model, and it's like, okay, yes, it can do that, but actually, is that what you want to use it for? Because maybe
Damn
you
it.
want
I'm doing
consistency, you've
exactly
got
that at the
layouts.
moment.
It's good at certain things, like if it's like a dynamic thing,
Yeah.
then AI is good at that, right? If it's consistent documents, right, then your traditional OCR tools will most likely be better because they're deterministic. Like,
Yeah.
given this input, here is the output, and it will be the same. Whereas with AI, you're not always going to get that. So it's like, again, it can do it, but is it relevant to your scenario? And it's like, which bit of the building blocks in your solution does AI need to turn up as opposed to trying to do all of it?
Yeah.
And then, you're kind of like maybe chasing yourself because it's like, again, not everything's deterministic. You can get a good guarantee, like changing prompts, models, even that, but it's like to get 100% every time, it's likely, it's not going to happen. So,
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I know our regular catch up is what have you been up to, and we haven't really
mm,
had that bit yet. So I'm speaking. Was it 1st of July? Is that next week or week after? I think it's the week after. Down at the South Coast User Group in the UK, and I'm sure Gary, you remember my Where on Earth bot, the
oh yeah, yeah.
artist formerly known as the Bing bot. I've just remade that using multi-agentic with Azure Foundry,
Mm,
more as a kind of POC. It was good. I always like to kind of try some new technology with a little bit of a purpose. And I thought, well, I've been meaning to re-update this. I've kind of started a few different times. This is a great chance to see how easy. And it was pretty easy, but it's
mm,
exactly that. It's not deterministic. And there's times I want my flow to follow exactly that thing, and it doesn't. And it's really irritating. It's like I kind of need bits to be non-deterministic. I need it to kind of be able to have a chat and a conversation. There's times I need to go, no, you need to follow these exact steps and not go out of that. And
mm,
it doesn't. And it's a really, I think we see a lot of people exploring these ideas and
yeah,
seeing what works and what doesn't. And there will be mistakes because people want to play with the latest toys
yeah,
on there. And then people will realize, well, no, it works in this scenario, not in this one. And it's going to be a combination. It's not you must go deterministic or you must go non-deterministic as well.
yeah. It's like you want best of both worlds, and I think there's an appreciation of that, and there's different solutions. Like, as soon as you said that, kind of like what sprung to mind was the recent updates for Logic Apps. Logic Apps being
Mm,
deterministic workflow, but having actions in there to provide that AI element, that non-deterministic kind of actions in your workflows. And it's like it's those kind of things that, again, hooking into the bits that where AI is needed, and not just trying to get it to do everything. Because it's like, if you want a linear path, workflows are still a good option, right?
absolutely.
So, it's
Absolutely.
where then it's like you might want to go, okay, well, actually, we want to do some reasoning over something to then like let the LLM make the decision. Like,
Yeah.
that's where you're kind of like, letting the LLM do its thing to then, but that might be then choosing another deterministic workflow.
I,
Um,
I was chatting with one of our automation team, and we kind of decided that when it comes to intelligent automation, the automation is when you speak to a client and they tell you what process they want. The non-deterministic stuff is when you realize what they actually do with it on there, which just made me chuckle slightly and has
uh,
helped my framing of it. So we talked a bit about the why there. Gary, what do we have that can actually do this?
I mean, where do we start? um, because there's a whole ton of different ways. So I think to kind of frame it in the way that I think, because like being developer advocate in like Microsoft 365, so I'm focused more on Copilot, is okay, what options do I have in terms of where I want to use Copilot. So we've got Copilot now can be used by everyone, right? So everyone with an M365 license can go and use Copilot Chat, and they can use agents in a limited fashion, dependent on how that's built, right? So from an agent builder perspective in M365, you've kind of got two camps. You've got we've already got the model, we've already got the orchestrator, and I just want to extend that, right? So it's I don't need to deploy anything. I can just configure it, right? And that would
Yeah.
be declarative agents. And on the other side, you've got then, well,
Sorry,
actually, sorry,
did we say what declarative agents are? I don't know if we should touch
so
on that a little bit
yeah,
in
so
case people
declarative
don't know.
agents are, well, as it sounds, it's a declarative way of defining an agent's behaviors. So the data sources that it's connected to, its instructions, maybe actions that it can perform, like making a request to an API, those kind of things that extend what you already have in Copilot. So you're reusing the whole stack, and your little agent bit is sat on the top, right? So from a user perspective, you go into Copilot, you see the specialized agent on the rail, you click on it. That is then your agent experience, and how you've defined it in that declarative manifest, the package. Then that's how it will behave. And back to your kind of point about why, Kev, the first thing is are you building something that's a specific scenario? Is
Mm.
it going to achieve a particular task? Do you want to preload it with a load of context so that when you ask for your status report in the agent, it already knows, well, like if it's tied to a project, okay, yes, I know status report means this project. I can go and get that relevant information to help end users, really. So context is key, and we're not always great
Yeah.
at providing that context. It's like, hey, I've got a problem with my computer. Okay, what does that mean? It's like that
But
kind of thing, right?
I think the important thing on the kind of what is start simple. Don't
Yeah,
go into
exactly.
full blown solution. Yes,
Yeah,
architects, some of you, I'm talking to you.
yeah,
Um, start with the simplest thing, and that's why I love the kind of SharePoint agents, the agent
mm-hmm.
builder. We were talking about that status report earlier. We can
Yeah,
go in with a few lines of a prompt, no code whatsoever,
mm-hmm.
can build a really powerful thing in there. And all you need to know is a bit of prompting from
Yeah.
that. So
It's
that's available. And then you start to build up and say, right, I need more knowledge. I need it to connect to things.
yeah,
I need to edge a little bit more complex from there.
yeah. And this is the thing, is that sometimes you might not need to have it connected to data. That's always
Yeah.
an option, right? It's like,
Yeah.
if you're starting from scratch, and let's say you are you're using Copilot to help you write news articles for the internet, as an
Mm.
example, right? After a few of those kind of uses of Copilot Chat to generate a news article, you might end up coming up with a bit of a formula. Like, okay, I'm kind of asking the same things. Actually, now I want to create an agent so that I don't have to keep putting those prompts in, or have a huge prompt that I have to keep putting
Yeah.
in all the time. It's like, okay, let's just take that prompt and let's standardize it in an agent, and then it becomes easier, because you might just say, like, hey, I'm writing an article about this topic, here's some content for extra context, apply the instructions, the rules around like how you want to create this article, and that could just be instructions. It doesn't have to be connected to anything, because you just pass the
Yeah.
context straight in.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a really
I mean,
easy
the
way
status
of
report
doing that.
example, say, I want it
Yeah.
to look like this, for
Mm-hmm.
example, would be some of those
Yeah.
instructions, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, from a kind of getting used to it perspective, like what we just said, just using instructions is great, because anyone can do that.
Mm. Yeah.
Anyone can go into the agent builder and build a instructions based agent, so
Yeah.
to speak.
And a top tip for people, use Copilot to help you build those instructions.
Yeah.
So kind of have that chat with Copilot, say, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do this, how would you recommend it? And it kind of
Yeah.
gives you a lovely format for it as well.
Yeah, and I did exactly the same thing. Even though I wasn't building the UI, I was doing it in VS Code. I was like building declarative agent. I'm just thinking, I've got GitHub Copilot in VS Code,
Yeah.
so just generate me kind of a good starting point for instructions for an agent that can do this. and it would
Yeah.
go along and it would build it out, and I go, okay, great, I'm at a good starting point, and then I can iterate on it as well. So yeah, use AI to build your AI agents as well.
So what's the next step beyond that then? You've kind of gone, well, this agent's nice, but I want it to do blah. How?
Uh,
What's next?
yeah, and guess this is kind of the bit where it's like going back to the trying things. It's like try it, because it might be that for your scenario, what you get out of the box is good enough, right? And it's fine. Maybe you're doing some you're generating content, you're summarizing things, doing kind of like I kind of feel as like the standard tasks of what an LLM can do, right? Like it
Hmm.
doesn't matter which one you choose; they're all generally good at doing these kind of tasks.
As long as it's in Azure AI, right, Gary?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Models
it can
vary,
exist.
but yeah, but it's kind of a thing like you're using a generalist kind of model, or
Yeah.
maybe you've decided that you want to pick and choose your model and pick and choose your orchestrator, and you're kind of building outside of Copilot. Maybe you're building things in Azure, maybe on like other clouds as well, using different services. Um, and the question is then is like, okay, from a Copilot perspective, from like UI, how can I extend Copilot with these kind of like custom agents, these things that are not running on Copilot's infrastructure? Like, how do we bring those in? So from a user perspective, all they need to know is I go to Copilot and I see the list of agents. It doesn't matter whether it's declarative using the infrastructure from Copilot or it's custom using whatever you've decided. Like you've got that option with different SDKs like Microsoft 365 Agents SDK to kind of bring those custom agents into the Copilot user interface. So again, from a user perspective, they get the same experience, just the answers, the responses are generated in a different way. And it's a really difficult kind of thing to kind of put a finger on, because it's like
What do
we
I
kind of,
use when?
what
Yeah.
do I use when, or which model's best? And it's like the one
Yeah.
thing which I found like doing this for it feels like quite a few years now, is like
Mm.
everything that you do is so specific to your scenario that don't just go with, oh, this model has these benchmarks, because those benchmarks might be tests that are not even relevant to what you're trying to achieve. And you really have to go through this kind of process of evaluating the responses from different models,
Yeah.
and different models
And it
act in
could
different
be
ways.
it can be a very tiny thing, tiny requirement that you add that can
Yeah,
drastically change which model, which orchestrator, which level
huge.
of complexity, which can
Mm.
sound really odd. I always
Yeah.
love the one of like having a whole load of policy documents.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can very easily throw a load of policy documents. We could put a SharePoint agent in that. That could
Mm.
solve some of it. We could do that with Copilot Studio and add a bit more instructions, a bit more detail, have some, you could request changes within that and have actions. But how do you get it to know that you are you? You're in this location, you're of this
Mm.
level, these are the things you've done before. Suddenly it's jumped in complexity, and just putting
Yeah.
it into a RAG based system is not going to work, because you need that kind of pulling out of your information and orchestrating towards the right policy. You need to
Mm.
put a load more things in that. It feels like a very small step towards it, but it's actually a big thing behind the scenes. So it's
Yeah,
being ready for that.
but it's kind of like the iceberg problem, Mitch, right? It's like you look at
Yeah,
Copilot and
yeah,
go, okay, I see this bit at the top and I see the chat and I see responses, and it's like, it's not good enough. I'm going to redo all this myself and I'm going to
yeah,
rebuild this. And it's like, don't underestimate how much like is put into the Copilot infrastructure. One thing which
yeah.
you haven't touched about, responsible AI, right?
Yes, good point.
Responsible AI
Good
is
point.
something that Copilot is doing behind the scenes for you. It's doing your compliance, it's doing your security across all your documents. It's handling that for you. When you go down the custom route, those are now things that you need to think about. So you need to think about, if you're hooking up to, another data source, is like how the permissions, propagate. How do you know that the person who is asking for this information should be able to see it as well? Those
Yeah,
kind of things, content controls, those like checking the inputs, checking the outputs, all those kind of things. Then is like, you really need to be thinking about. That's not a reason to not do it. It's just the I see a lot of people kind of rush down there, oh, I just need to use another model, and then forget that there's all this other stuff that
Yeah.
really you should be thinking about as well. So
And I
yeah.
think while that was a facetious comment about as long as you're using Azure OpenAI, with it, I actually think it's quite important because you get that responsible AI. You can bring your content safety APIs within that.
Yeah.
You've got the logging and monitoring. So, what one thing
Mm.
you said there about it doesn't matter about which agent to use as an end user.
Mm.
Well, it could do because they could cost a very different thing, and you might be using
That's
it a
true.
lot when it's not the right agent, and it kind of costs some things there. So there's kind of
Mm.
considerations that come into it. So the responsibility, the cost, the value it's bringing within that, these
Yeah.
annoyingly need to be factored into all these decisions around, even
Mm.
what model you're going to use. If you're using the latest model because there's a good reason for it technically,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to cost more. Is the
Yeah.
value of what it brings going to be worth that extra cost?
Yeah, and this is where we kind of almost see like there's a middle ground, right? Of the,
Mm.
well, so I've got Copilot, the infrastructure, and I can build declarative agents on there, and it's like, okay, so for whatever reason, it's not quite there. So the alternative is go and rebuild the whole stack, right? Like on both sides of the extremes. So it's like
Yeah,
there's a bit in the middle, right?
I can see the
Where
money people in the middle going, what, what,
yeah, so
what?
a great example was, and I speak to customers all the time who have said, okay, we've already gone and built our indexing. Like we've gone and used Azure AI search, for example, right? We've
Yeah,
got things in there. We don't want to have to then rebuild everything, like, and create like deploy all the models and do all the orchestration, because it's like, if Copilot already has that, how can we leverage that? And I found this from ISVs who were really interested, because it's like, that's a thing
yeah,
that they don't have to cost in. It's like, they can do the indexing of the content and then provide that to a declarative agent, maybe through an API. And that's maybe then where you can kind of get this balance of, actually the model that Copilot's using is, generic model. It'll be the GPT class models, right? Good at summarizing the general models. But it might be that actually you need custom indexing.
yeah.
Maybe you've got documents that are,
Your markdown example,
yeah, exactly, like the markdown one. It's kind of like, I'm chunking it myself almost by going, okay, each file is a day,
yeah,
so it's not huge, right? But if you've got big documents, and like, let's say big legal documents, things like that, and it needs to be a big thing. It's like you've maybe got a decision of like, well, do we chunk that up? Like, do we break that document up in M365, or do we apply our own kind of custom indexing where we can index the content in the way that we want it to? Because again, it's our content, but we reuse the infrastructure from Copilot. We don't have
yeah,
to go and deploy another model. And a way that you can do that is create a declarative agent with an API plugin that could just call like the Azure AI search API and issue a search query and return those results back to Copilot to let it reason over. And that's kind of a halfway house, if you like.
yeah.
And I think that gives a lot of scope and a lot of control back to organizations that want something a little bit different, or like are hitting limits
And are
with
happy to
maybe.
pay for it as well.
Yeah, exactly. But even then, it's like, it depends on what you want.
Yeah,
You could just have lexical search. You don't have to have vector
absolutely,
search.
absolutely.
Again, it depends on what your needs are. You
Can,
don't have to go
can I
full,
pick that
like,
because I think it's a
yeah,
really important point there. So, lexical search is almost the traditional search
like
as we've seen it
keywords,
before. It kind of
right?
indexes the content based on keyword. Vector search is it builds up relationships between your kind of tokens, between your different chunks. I'm not going to say between different words, it's almost the chunks of word to kind of it will give you a much better view of kind of connecting different bits of documents rather than going, you want this keyword, it's this document, here, have this.
Yeah,
With vector search, it'll give you, you want this chunk of a document, you want this chunk within there, so you can get more detailed results. And I think in a lot of people's heads, it's vector is better. And that's not true. It's better
no,
for certain scenarios. In other
yeah.
scenarios, lexical will be better from that as well.
Yeah, so again, from a
Maybe this is
cost
a deep dive we
perspective,
could go into a show around
definitely,
those
I
two
think so.
things.
But it kind of comes back to that you're always balancing cost, right? And it's again, it's like
Yeah,
yes, you can go do vector. There's a lot more things you need to think about. You need a model in there. You need to generate embeddings. You know, there is generally more cost, but it's like if you can get away with not doing vectors, and you could use more one of the traditional
yeah,
search kind of approaches. That's going to be cheaper, but
yeah,
it's going to give you a solution that you know hopefully then will satisfy the requirements, the outcomes that you need. Which is an interesting thing, like because we kind of talked about indexing. You've got Copilot connectors, right? Which is what we mentioned is like you've got data on
and that
the
the
outside.
artist formerly known as graph connectors for anyone
Yeah, I
who's
didn't
been
want to
around a
say that.
while.
I almost said graph connectors, but I'm glad you said
I
it.
was quite impressed. Yeah,
Yeah, don't worry. The amount of times I said that at Build, I was like, no, no, no. So yeah, Copilot connectors, formerly known as graph connectors, is a way of bringing that external content into M365 and into the semantic index in
yeah.
Copilot. So you get that indexing for free. The trade off.
Can I call that out? Because
Okay,
I
go on.
get this question a lot. Yes, if you do that external graph connector, it is semantic index, which is the
Mhm.
vector based, not the lexical, which is really, really important.
Yeah. So, but you're bringing it into, and this is like any other content in M365, right? So it's like the
Yeah,
same way that a
absolutely.
document would be indexed in SharePoint, like that kind of thing. So it's like the default. It's
Yeah.
what we've chosen as the platform, the way that we index it. But it's a free way of getting an index. The trade-off is you don't know how that thing's being indexed because you're not in
Mhm.
control of it. And again, it's one of those things of like if you're bringing in the
But
content, then
sorry to keep jumping in.
sorry, go
Can I counter that slightly? You don't know how it's being chunked.
on.
You can manage the index. So you've obviously got this out of the
That's true.
box
Yeah.
indexes. So there's things like Salesforce, ServiceNow, I think it's a SQL one, etc. And you can basically say, here's my Salesforce instance. Go and index this, and it will
Mm.
go and put it through. But you could build your own with a graph connector and tell it what you want to index. You can make sure you can put permissions. You can pull the things from there.
Yeah.
How it chunks that up and uses it, you haven't got control over that bit in
Yes,
there.
that's true. To give that caveat, but I think it's a good thing of like, okay, I've got external data, I want to bring that in. I don't always have to go to like a specific search service like Azure AI Search. But
Yeah,
again, it's like try that. Like there's no cost to
absolutely.
it. We basically removed the limits
Oh,
at
have you?
build. Yeah. So now you can have as many connections as you like.
Oh, really?
The
Oh, I missed that.
content has increased from 4 meg to 30.
Because it used
There's
to
a
be
lot
50
more.
million indexed items as a
Yeah,
limit. Has
that's
that gone then
gone.
as well?
Yeah.
I'll be back.
So yeah, a lot of the limits have been removed, so they're a lot more accessible than they have done in the past. And when I've kind of the first thing like I did a session at Build was okay, who knows about graph connectors? And a lot of people's hands went up, and it's like okay, because graph connectors have been around for a while. Like I remember we're talking about them from a
That makes
search
me feel
perspective,
happy.
right?
I think
Yeah.
when we were at CPS together, I was talking about graph connectors. Finally, they're getting their moment.
But this is the thing, it's like and this is one thing, just a general comment of give yourself time to refresh and go over a technology
Mm,
maybe every 6 months, like
yeah,
just to see where it's progressed. Because graph connectors, Copilot connectors is one thing. Like there might have been limits that like okay, we're hitting limits on items, on the number of connections that we can create in a tenant, and it's like now they're a bit more viable. But that's the same thing, just changed slightly. The service has been changed. The same way with declarative agents, and I see a lot of people who did this, where maybe they tried a
yeah.
declarative agent when Copilot was kind of first out, and the experience wasn't as good as it is today. Today they are miles better, a lot more
And
consistent.
easier
But
to manage. You've got the
yeah,
I got to get this right. M365 agents toolkit to kind of help deploy them, which I think really, and things like TypeSpec to help define
yeah,
some of the APIs, which is really good.
you've got a lot more tooling. You've had over a year's worth of metrics and refinement to improve just the general um, behaviors of these agents. So you off the back of that, but then improvements to the capabilities that agents have
Yeah.
as well. So we added things in like code interpreter, the image generator. Extra data sources. So, we had
Web
SharePoint, OneDrive,
sources.
web
Yeah.
searches, scoped web searches. We've now
Mm.
got email, people, Teams chats, and this is being updated on a regular basis. So, on the pro code side, I'm looking at the manifest. The manifest version tells me what capabilities this agent has. And we've had a few releases in the last few months and new capabilities coming in there all the time. So always keep an eye on kind of those improvements that are happening, because you might have discounted a declarative agent because it just didn't support a particular data source, whereas
Yeah.
now that might be there. So
I think there's
keep
another
those
show
in
idea
mind.
to deep dive into those,
Yeah, yeah,
isn't there?
definitely. Yeah.
Now, we kind of left the last section with not much time of the how. We've thrown a load of technologies, we've thrown a load of things for people to think about
Mm-hmm.
within there. How on earth do they know where to go? And there's almost a kind of simple answer is Microsoft Learn and go and check out the things on there.
That is definitely, yeah. So I mean, one of the things that we've been building in our team, or two of the things actually, we've got one on Learn and one outside of Learn. So if you're looking for content in Learn, something that we built was extending Microsoft 365 curriculum, which is more on the pro code side. So it's all Visual Studio Code based, where we go into declarative agents, API plugins, authentication and API plugins, all that kind of stuff. So it's a kind of standard Learn format that you have probably known and used. So it's all in there with even some challenges as well. So we can put that link in the show notes. We've also got Copilot Developer Camp as well, which is more
That's a
lab
great thing.
focused. But in there, like we've literally just been releasing new labs. We've got a custom engine agents lab that uses Agents SDK, Azure Foundry, Semantic Kernel. That was from one of the sessions we did at Build. That's been published in there as well. But you've got declarative agents, Copilot Studio, SharePoint agents. It's more kind of like generally across the board in M365. So there's content in all different places that you can get, and that's all coming from our team as well. And community calls as well is always a great place to
I was about to say, listening to
go
what
and
other people are doing,
yeah,
listening to their challenges of, I did start with a simple, this is why I moved up to here, which is important, looking
yeah.
at some of the examples that people got. And again, not looking at the most exciting examples, go, let's replicate that. We can build our own 16 or 18-month project to get this declarative agent while Garry sits there and uses the agents toolkit. But by the way, have we got an acronym for the agents toolkit now? Is it ATK or
ATK,
right?
yeah, yeah.
I did
So
like TTK, but
yeah, it's agents toolkit. You just drop the M365 bit.
right, got that
Yeah,
bit on there. So yeah, I think getting stuff those and get hands on with these as well. Maybe another
yeah.
show idea is how I know you've been doing some things with dev proxy about kind of being
Mm-hmm.
able to mock some of the interfaces using things like 5.4 to try out things locally. So
Yeah,
even if you don't have that Copilot license, finding ways that you can build some of these things as well is really worth looking into. And I think
yeah.
that is one thing I've been really happy Microsoft's getting better, not perfect, but getting
Mhm.
better at that developer model and actually working with that.
Yeah, I think one thing to add, another place to learn is definitely samples. So we've got Procode developer
Yeah,
samples
good
repo.
show.
I'm currently doing a lot of work in there and updating things as well. There's going to be a lot more samples coming in there. So I think it's a good place to kind of just go and have a look, see what people are doing. Even looking at kind of things like the prompt library, that is just a series of prompts. Like they might be the basis of instructions
Completely.
for an agent.
Yeah,
Those kind of things. So I think it's kind of like flexing that muscle as well. It's like if you're in the stage of, yeah, I'm not really sure about why I would need an agent. It's like, well, maybe you're repeating things. Like try the agent model and standardize your work.
Definitely. Well, I unfortunately am going to have to wrap up this, so we'll have to stop the recording. But hopefully, everyone enjoyed that as a kind of intro. My headphones just cut out, so I don't know exactly what you said there. But if apologies if you said this already. We'd love to hear from people. What would you like to hear from? Are there areas you would like to deep dive on? Are there some cool things you've done that you'd like to share with us as well? Let us know. Reach out to either of us individually or to the Copilot Connection. Send us a message from there, and we'll definitely try and get you on the show or get some of those things to dig into. So we'd love to hear from you. But otherwise, we'll wrap up there. Thank you very much. Don't forget to send it to your
Cheers.
friends, subscribe, let your family know. I'll admit most of your family probably aren't quite so detailed in some of the dev aspects here, but certainly the other bits of the show. And watch out, listen out. We'll have Zoe on with her new co-host as well, coming to talk about some of this responsible AI. And Zoe and I will still be coming back with our own shows on there as well. So look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks very much, Garry.
Thanks very much.
Cheers. Bye bye.